So I grew up in Fresno, California, which has a very large Southeast Asian population. And I grew up going to like Lao stores. Like my parents had a Lao supermarket. They also had a video store that rented out like Thai and Chinese dubbed in Thai movies. I would say some of the challenges with that is more involved or more in the realm of schooling, of perhaps how teachers and school administrators perceive specifically Southeast Asian students. The challenge for me wasn't that I was perceived negatively, just because I very much enacted what the myth of the model minority portrays, and that I was really quiet, I was docile, I was submissive, I obeyed authority, I followed rules really well. And so the challenge for me wasn't that teachers treated me poorly, it was more in the juxtaposition of how I saw other students being treated, of the ways that when students don't perform being like a good student in the way that teachers want, I see how much they are both disciplined and neglected. So I guess my challenge was navigating the education system as a space of being harmful to our identities. As I've been saying, I grew up in Fresno, so I knew that I was Lao, but I didn't really understand what that meant until my sophomore year in high school. My English teacher had this assignment of ask your parents where they came from, their history, and all of that. And I interviewed my mom, and my mom was like, I'm a refugee. I'm like, okay, sure, I know that. And then I'm like, wait, what do you mean? Not really like giving me the full story. She was just like, "May have been refugee, Bukauchaiva." And I'm like, yeah, I get it. But not until she told me like her journey to get to the US, and not until I talked also to my aunts and uncles about how they had to flee and having to go into the camps and having to change their names and having to like do all sorts of things to be protected, did I finally really understand what it meant to be a refugee. Like, I think that I always understood being a refugee, the dictionary or the United Nations term is that you had to leave your country. But not until I really got that story from my mom and her siblings that I finally get the reason why we are in the US, or the reason why we like grew up in poorer neighborhoods was not an accident, but it was because of political decisions that were made by the US. So part of that is to say that what motivates me and drives me in education specifically is that while I know and felt that I succeeded in the education system because I went to a good public university, I'm getting a PhD now, those are like all of the markers of success, but I don't think that the education system helped me be a racialized Asian American person in the world. I think it forced me to assimilate and to like enact certain ways of being that are disconnected from my understanding of being Lao, and learning how to navigate those things is part of what motivates me to recognize that succeeding in the American term sometimes means like the erasure of your cultural identities, and that's not how I want the world to be, and not how I want people to be educated. As a future educator and as a researcher, I advocate for, again, affirming and teaching to people's racial, ethnic, and sexual identities, understanding that students have lives outside of school that come into play when they are learning in the classroom. A lot of those things can't like just be forgotten about or neglected when you are facing realities, economic realities, like socio-political realities, facing xenophobic things that are happening out in the world. So what I advocate for is learning how to make those connections between the outside world and the education system, and understanding that students need to be taught with a culturally relevant lens, which doesn't just mean like I can give you a book about or written by a Lao American person and then you'll feel represented. It also means that the teacher teaches me in a way that makes me feel seen by them and understood and validated.